Hello everyone, welcome to another BGCSE past paper review. Today we're reviewing a biology paper. We're reviewing a paper 3 from the year 2021. Please remember to write your school number, your candidate number, your initial, and also your surname. Now before we start the examination, please read through all the instructions carefully. And if you have any queries or in any doubt, please clear up all that before you start the exam with your examiner. At this time, if you haven't done so yet, please like the video and also ensure that you share it with your friends. And of course, please do subscribe as well. All right, so let's jump into this paper quickly. And so for this paper, the first question reads that green plants manufacture biological molecules such as amino acids and sucrose from the products of photosynthesis. It said these molecules are transported around the plant to where they are needed by the process of translocation. Before I get into answering this question, I want to quickly just point out a few things. That the molecules that are formed from photosynthesis, they are organic molecules. And notice here you see amino acids are found in the plant, and definitely amino acids are used to make proteins, just to point that out. From photosynthesis, we will get glucose, and glucose is the sugar that is formed, and also it is an organic compound. And organic compound means that the compound has carbon and hydrogen inside of them, all right? Again, a point to note that the process by moving plant food and also nutrients around the plant is by the process of translocation. All right, so movement of amino acids and sucrose is by translocation. All right, so the first part of the question asks us to write a balanced chemical equation for the process of photosynthesis. All right, by now we should all be a master at writing the balanced chemical equation for photosynthesis. So the first thing you want to write here is carbon dioxide. And again, it doesn't matter if you put carbon dioxide first or water. So it's carbon dioxide plus water. All right, so it's plus H2O. And then all of that will give you the products. And just to point out that carbon dioxide and water, they are what you call the reactants. All right, so they are needed in front of the equation. And those are what are needed by photosynthesis, or the process of photosynthesis, to manufacture our organic materials, which is our food. So the organic material that is produced here is glucose. So it's going to be C6H12O6. All right, O6, and that is glucose. And glucose is an organic molecule. A point to note here is that carbon dioxide and water, they are inorganic molecules. Again, what will also form here is oxygen gas. So going to be O2. All right, and just to point out again that here you'll have your light. So you can put light here. All right, so the plant will require light as well. And also what is also needed here underneath the arrow is your chlorophyll. So you're going to put chlorophyll here. All right. Now, once you have done that, the equation is not yet balanced. So we're going to balance the equation by putting some numbers in some appropriate places. So what it means by balancing the equation is to ensure that whatever is on one side is equal to the other side. So let me just quickly put the numbers there. So you just need to remember to balance the chemical equation for photosynthesis. A 6 will be placed in front of all the molecules with the exception of glucose, okay? So a 6 is in front of carbon dioxide, a 6 is in front of water, and a 6 is in front of oxygen as well. All right, so that's the balanced chemical equation right there. All right, so let's now get into the other question. But before I get into the question again, I want to point out another thing here is that what you need to remember is that the opposite of photosynthesis is respiration without, of course, the light and chlorophyll. All right, so the reverse equation is for respiration. All right, so let's now go into part 2 of this question. It says, state the name of one raw material needed for photosynthesis and describe how the plant obtains this raw material. So you can write one of two things, all right? You can write one of two things, and here we're talking about carbon dioxide and water. So the plant will require carbon dioxide and water. So I just put carbon dioxide and water. Okay. And it said one, but I'm gonna put two of them because it could be any one in the exams. You don't know what will show up. They may ask you for the specific one or so on. So please just know that you can write any one. So I'm gonna say or water. Now it asks us to give a description of how the plant will obtain this raw material. So if it is carbon dioxide, all right, so if it is CO2, so carbon dioxide is CO2, and please write the names, and if you wish, you can put the chemical symbol or the formula of the compound within the bracket, but try not to write the formula for the compound and leave it just as that. Please write the name. I notice even this question is very specific. State the name, not the formula, because sometimes we write formula and we're so confident that this is the answer. Yes, it is the answer, but it didn't follow the proper instructions, and so therefore you will not earn a mark. So please be careful. It's best to write the name, and if you wish, you put the formula in bracket. That's a different story. Now, so describing how the plant obtain carbon dioxide. So let's say for carbon dioxide, so if it's getting carbon dioxide, for carbon dioxide, the plant will get that from the atmosphere. So get it from the atmosphere. So from the atmosphere by diffusion. Okay? And by diffusion, and diffusion is through the leaf or through the stomata in the leaf. Okay? So let's say through the stomata in the leaf. In the leaves. All right? All right, so here we have that. So that could be one of your answers there. And then if you have chosen water, then you could say, okay, then water is obtained from the soil. So this will be from the soil, through the root hair cell, through the root hair cells by osmosis. All right. At this point, I need to just mention a worthy, something that is very important to mention right here, is that light is needed by the plant as well, and the plant will obtain light from the sun through rays, okay, through rays. All right, or you can say through waves, because light is a form of wave. It's an energy, and light contains smaller particles called photons. Okay, and the photons are needed to excite the chlorophyll to release electrons to split water molecules. Okay, so light is needed to split water molecules to make hydrogen ions and also to release oxygen. And the hydrogen ions will react with carbon dioxide to make the glucose. Okay, so just in case you need to explain that process, you just know the correct terms to use. Now, for this part of this question here, it said that the diagram shows a ringing experiment carried out on a green plant to investigate what happens when translocation is prevented from occurring across region Y. So notice here they want to say you want to stop translocation, which is the transportation of plant food. Please remember that, particularly glucose and amino acids. All right, so it's a ringing involves removal of the outer layer of the stem within a narrowed strip to form a complete ring. So right here now, this portion was removed. Might as well just highlight that section. All right, so let's highlight this section right here. So this is the inner part of the stem. The outer part was removed. And so let's see what they ask us about this. All right, so Y is removed portion, X is the upper part. And I will talk about something specific to that location, but let's see what this asks first. It said, ringing prevents translocation by removing a specific tissue from the stem. And then we said, name that tissue. Now, very important right here, right? It said, prevents translocation. So you take away this tissue that prevents translocation. You need to remember what part of a plant transport plant food, and that is the phloem vessel. Okay, so the phloem is the answer right here because it is what is transporting the food, and that process is called translocation. All right, so I think that was a kind of a giveaway type of thing, but again, you need to remember these terms because something going the examination, you get a little bit flustered, and some of the basic things you forget them, but just be calm and just answer appropriately. Now, part 2 of this question here now, it said that suggest one visible change that will occur at point X on the plant stem. So what changes will you see at X? I must go back to show you where X is. And I want to just make a point here so you could understand this a little bit better. Now remember that the plant leaves, they make food, right? And the food is being made in the leaves, the food will travel downwards towards X. All right, and I'm just saying this now because there's also a next concept you need to know, that plant food can move up and down. So if you see arrows going up and down through the stem or through a vessel, it is a phloem vessel. Water is only transport upwards, okay? So transportation of water is upwards, but food is transport up and also down. All right, so here now the plant food is made in the leaves, and so they will come to this point. But what will happen here, the plant food will not be able to pass X to go down to the rest of the plant, okay? So what do you think will happen there as a result if the plant food is just being stuck right there? So let's think about it. And so what you'll see here as an obvious change will be swelling of that area, or you may say bulging, okay? So let's say swelling or bulging will take place, okay? So it will be bulging out, becoming larger, or you can say enlarge, whichever word you prefer. All right, so bulging, swelling, enlargement of the area, whichever one. Doesn't matter, it's the same thing. All right, so let's explain why this change happens at X. So why bulging will take place? Why will it become swollen? And so here you're going to say now the descending, we want to say the descending food that coming from the leaves, right? So let's say wrong place. Okay, let's put it here. Let's say the descending food. Let's say descending food. The descending food that was produced. Was produced in the leaves will not be able to pass that section, okay? Pass, let's say X, or you just say that section, all right? To pass that section or X, okay? That section of the stem. And it's a 2-mark question if you realize that, right? So you'll not be able to pass that section of the stem, all right? So therefore, let's say, therefore, the food will lodge or store there. The food will lodge or store at X, okay? At X, all right, resulting in the enlargement, in the swelling or enlargement, all right? Swelling of the region. All right, so yeah, so therefore the food will store at X. So I can put it right here. The food will store at X. The food will store, let's put that in, will store at X, resulting in that swelling of the region, or resulting in the swelling of the region. Now, what I want to point out here as well, what will happen there after a period of time. So when the food is there over a long period of time, and different plants may take different timing, what you also will see there is roots, okay? So you will see roots as well. And just to make a note, so bulging is one of the visible things that you'll see take place. Matter of fact, that will be the first visible thing. And then eventually you will see formation of roots. So I just want to make a note right here that you'll see formation of roots as well. So formation of roots. All right. And of course, roots will form there as well because different hormones will be produced, auxin and so on, and will stimulate the growth of roots. All right. And just to make I'm going to do something in the diagram right here. So I'm going to draw some roots. Let's put this in a different color. Let's put some green. All right. The roots won't be green, but yep, you'll see some roots coming out like that eventually. All right. And then you could cut that stem and then you plant it. But obviously, just to make a note right here again, is that for the roots to grow there, you put a plastic bag. It don't have to be a plastic bag. It could be like a foil paper, but you have to cover this with special material. And inside of this, we'll have moist soil. And because the moist soil will be there, the roots will be triggered to be formed around this area or the cut area. And then eventually when roots form, you cut this piece off and then you plant the top by removing the material you cover this area with. All right? So just to make a note of that. So you need to know that process as well. Let's see. Okay, this question is finished. Okay, so this question is finished. I want to point out something again before I move on to the other question, but this question is finished really. For this question here, no, not the question necessarily, but for the diagram, I want to know what process this is called. This process is called air layering. So just in case you may see it, it's called air layering. And this is when a part of a stem is cut, scraped, and covered with moist soil. So it's called air layering or otherwise called marcutting. Okay, so it's called marcutting or air layering. So please make sure you know this. All right. So please study it and know how it is done. And it's a form of asexual reproduction as well. All right. So just to make a note of that. All right. So question number 2. And this one said, the diagram show the sequence of event in the process by which sodium ions move out of an animal cell across the cell membrane. All right, so it's showing you here now, the diagram is not clear, but what I want to tell you that these circular objects, they are sodium. A key is given at the bottom. So the circles, they are sodium ions. Now what I want to point out here, if you notice the chain of events, is that the sodium, let me just kind of highlight that, the sodium here will move into these regions here, you notice it, and eventually work themselves through, and eventually the membrane here will change shape, and then the sodium will be exiting on the opposite side of the cell membrane. Now what I want to point out with the cell membrane as well, some very important points that I think you need to know and need to pay attention to. What make up a cell membrane is what they call phospholipids. So these circular stuff right here with the 2 legs, all right, they are phospholipids. And so the head part is a phosphate group, and then the 2 tails, they actually the fatty acids. Now what you need to also know about cell membrane, any large molecule you see through the membrane, it is a protein, okay? It is a protein. So these are called, you have transport proteins and so on, right? So there are different type of proteins there, but we're going to make mention of them, but generally they are proteins, okay? And so we generally call them transport protein. All right, and again, we have varying types, but we get into that a little later. Now what I want to point out here with this diagram as well, notice that the protein is changing shape. Notice the bottom here is open wider, the top is closed. As the sodium passes through, the change is reversed, and now the top is open and the bottom here is closed. Now what I wanted to also note is a big thing here is that ATP is converted to ADP, which is adenosine triphosphate, is converted to adenosine diphosphate. So when ATP is converted to ADP, energy is released. So obviously, this process here is using energy, okay? The presence of the ATP turning to ADP, that means energy is being used. All right, what you need to note, or actually know, is that if the substance is moving across the membrane and it is not water, it is a type of what? Diffusion. So a diffusion process is taking place here. All right, but let's get into the meat of the matter, what they're asking us. They said, on one of the diagram, draw a line to each of the structures stated in 1, 2, and 3, label each using the letter indicated. So the phospholipid bilayer. So phospholipid bilayer is P. Now let's talk about phospholipid bilayer, because let's just, a matter of fact, I'm just say this. I'm gonna do like that and call it P. And the reason I'm doing that because bilayer means 2 layers of phospholipids. Okay, so just to mention that 2 layers of phospholipid. And so it's a transport protein Q. So the transport protein Q, I talk about that. Any large structure you see within the cell membrane or especially if you're going through the cell membrane, it is a protein. So this one is Q. Let's label this Q. That's our transport protein. And you could put Q in any of the diagram. It doesn't matter. Like I said, in any of the diagram, it really don't matter. All right. So one of the diagrams really don't matter where you label them. And the cytoplasm. Now, if the cytoplasm, big clue here, right? It said in the statement that the sodium will be moving out of the cell. All right. So that's a clue. I'm just showing you this a clue. The sodium ions move out of the cell. So the sodium ion starts here, the arrow going up like that. So this is an arrow. You can see the arrow is there. And then eventually the sodium ions will be on the outside. This is an arrow as well, right? So obviously, if it's moving out of a cell, this is the outside of the cell on this side, and this is the inside of the cell. So the cytoplasm is right here. A matter of fact, the conversion of ATP to ADP also indicate that must take place in the cytoplasm. It's within the cell. All right, so the outside of a cell will be where the three sodium ions are now on the last diagram, and the ATP will be in the cytoplasm. So let's see what letter they say again to label this. Okay, R. So the cytoplasm is any diagram on this side. Let's call this R. That's the cytoplasm. All right, so that's that for that. Let's look at part B now. And for part B, says state the meaning of the term bilayer when referring to phospholipids in the cell membrane. Again, bilayer, the word bi means two. So this is two layers of phospholipid, right? So it's literally mean two layers, all right? Two layers of phospholipid, okay? That's what it really literally means, okay? All right? So phospholipids. Right. Now, so there's an inner layer and there's an outer layer, right? Okay, so two layers of phospholipids. All right, so now part C is saying that state the name of the process by which sodium ions move out of the animal cell and explain your choice. Now, I'm going to tell you generally off the bat, as I mentioned up there, you notice see ATP turn to ADP, which means energy was involved in that. So this process here is an active transport. Okay, so it's active transport. All right. If you put diffusion, I don't think they'll give you that right. A matter of fact, they could depend on how you explain. So by the way, let them not say you can't. All right. But I'm going to explain how you'd have to explain your way out of this. Now, active transport is simple because energy is used. Okay. Energy is required. Energy is required. And how we know energy is required? We see ATP was used and converted to ADP. So we see ATP was used, all right, and converted to ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, all right? And so once energy is used, you definitely know that it is active transport, because active transport requires energy. Not only that, once it's the protein changing shape, that is also another clue. Now, let's say you choose diffusion as your answer. What could have been your explanation? A logical explanation. A substance crosses cell membrane, correct. And it is not water. A substance crosses the membrane from one concentration to another, and a substance is not water. Because once it's water, it's going to be osmosis. So any movement of substance from one region to another, or from one area of a concentration, for a specified concentration, to another area of a specified concentration, it is diffusion. And diffusion is normally from high to low concentration, but if it's moving from a low concentration to a higher concentration, then therefore it becomes active transport. All right? All right, so just to make a mention of that. I want to make a mention of another type of transport that you may also see which require a protein, and it is called facilitated transport. Okay, so you have active transport, you have facilitated transport. I'm going to just write that down at the bottom right here, since they talk about protein in the cell membrane. So you can also say facilitated transport. And facilitated transport again is a form of diffusion. So you can say facilitated diffusion or facilitated transport. And it's similar to the one that is shown in the diagram with this. The difference is now there's no need for energy. All right, so protein is used to assist the movement of the molecules. Just to make a note of that. So you can make a note that in facilitated transport is that protein is used to assist the movement of substances across the membrane. All right, and of course that in this case it doesn't require any energy because it is a passive transport by diffusion. All right, so just to make a note there. All right, and again, it is similar to what is shown there, but the difference is the protein will not be changing shape. As a matter of fact, let me just quickly draw one for you. So you may see a protein look like this, for example, in the membrane. So you see two sides and they're not changing shape. And what will happen here is that the substance will be able to go through. Let's say, let me draw a structure. So let's say this is sodium or anything else. You may see going through it without any change in shape. So this one here is just diffusion by what they call facilitated transport or facilitated diffusion. Why this is one is not active transport, they just go through it. And these proteins are particularly shaped in a certain way to allow only certain things to pass through or only certain substances to pass through. All right, so I hope that is kind of clear for you, the difference between active transport and facilitated transport. All right, so active one, you see a change in shape of the protein, and you see energy is required, but in facilitated transport, no energy is required, no change in shape of the protein at all. All right? All right, so that's just a diffusion process by passive means. All right, now for the last part of this question, it's compare active transport with osmosis. And I guess they kind of give you a clue that, hey, we were talking about active transport. All right, so my suggestion to you though, right, doing a question like this is how I'll answer it, right? And this is always my advice. To make it simple to mark, make your paper really simple to mark, make the markers a fun mark in the paper. So what I'll do is to put a line down the page like that. And then what I'll do next is on one side, I may put active transport here. So let's put active transport here. And nothing is wrong with this. You just want to organize the paper properly. It's about quality over quantity. So once you have the information and it is correct, then you are good to go and you will organize, as a matter of fact. And let's put osmosis here. Okay. All right. Osmosis. All right. And let's do the difference now. So first difference, number one. All right. So one, I put number one there. And remember looking for 3 marks, right? So easy for you to see your marks and you have a better organization of a paper. I just like it this type of way. All right. So this one now requires energy. Remember that, right? So it requires energy. Osmosis is a passive, so it does not require energy. So no energy is required. Okay, no energy is required. All right, no energy is required. All right, and so for the next difference here now, and again, please remember you're comparing the same things. If you talk about energy, talk about energy. You can't talk about energy and talk about something else. That's not mark worthy. You must say the same feature together, right? Now, again, is that in active transport, is that the movement, or just say movement of substance. So movement, I'm going to try go short to move faster. So movement of substance, all right? Movement of substance is against, let me just put it here, is against a concentration gradient, okay? Against a concentration gradient. All right, gradient. All right. So here we have it. And of course now for osmosis, the movement is along a concentration gradient. So the movement is along the concentration gradient. All right, concentration gradient. I'm just trying to move as fast as I possibly can. All right, so movement along the concentration gradient. A third one here now, which is our third marks, is that the movement is any substance. For active transport, you can have any substance. So movement of any substance. All right, so it could be water or not water, so it could be any substance really. All right, so for osmosis though, is the movement of water. So water is being moved. Okay, so movement of water. So water is the substance that is being moved. Okay, it does not involve any other substance but water. Now, another thing that you can also, when you talk about active transport, you don't necessarily, well, it's energy is required, so that's fine. Okay, so we're gonna stay with those 3 marks right there, right? All right. So that's 3 marks there. Let's jump to the next question now. The next question. Oh, yeah, this is number 3 here. All right, so this question now is said that a current environmental problem is of global warming resulting from the greenhouse effect. State the meaning of the term global warming and explain how global warming occurs. So this one now we really have to get into some serious discussion with this. First, you have to know about greenhouse effect, right? Talk about the greenhouse gases. You need to know about greenhouse gases and examples of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and so on. Please make sure you know those. All right, and also the sources of these gases as well. All right, so let's talk about what is global warming first. And so global warming now is the gradual, and that's going to be important because it's not just a one-time thing. It's a gradual or an incremental change in temperature. So it's a gradual, let's say gradual increase in the temperature of the earth, in the temperature of the earth. Okay. All right. So that's what global warming is. And it also asks us to explain how it occurs. So it occurs when carbon dioxide, when carbon dioxide and other pollutant and other pollutants absorb and trap. So you're going to absorb and trap, let's say absorb and trap reflected, because this is going to be important, reflected radiation from the earth's surface, okay, or from the surface of the earth. All right. So what is happening here now is that once you have a high amount of heat energy come onto the earth, it's going to be reflected off the earth and any other objects that on the earth, and then when it's going up, the gases that are there will trap the heat and then allow the earth's surface to become even warmer. All right, and this takes place generally at the ozone layer. All right, so those ozone gases, we need to be aware of them. All right, so now part B of this question is stated now that the graph shows changes to sea level around the coast of Greenland from 1880 to 2000. And let's make a note right here. Notice on the y-axis the height of sea level above sea level in 1880. And so 1880 is our benchmark, our standard in terms of observing what took place over a period of time. So 1880 was the start, and then gradually you see over to 2000. And notice you see there's changes as we go along. Generally, a general increase in sea level over a period of time. So here it asks us now to describe the pattern of change in sea level shown on the graph for 2 marks. And for 2 marks, you generally just can't say that, hey, the sea level increase. No, you have to go look for something else to give it that extra mark, right? So here now, if you notice, I'm going to kind of break this down into pieces, right? So kind of give you more marks into it. So I'm going to say here is that there's a rapid, notice from 1880 to the 1900, there is a rapid increase. Okay, so I'm going to say right here that a rapid increase from 1880 to 1900. All right. All right, there's a rapid increase there. And then now, I want to notice something here between the 1900 and 1920. If you notice what happened here, this change was not rapid at all. Okay, then let's say a slight increase from 1900, the slight increase from 1900 to 1920. Okay, all right, so there's a slight increase there. And then now if you notice from 1920 all the way up, that's no serious problem because this is a rapid increase going across there. All right, and then we're going to say after that now, so from 1920, let's say from 1920, all right, the sea level increased rapidly, okay, from 1920 to 2000, because it stopped at 2000, right? Yep, to 2000, the sea level increased rapidly. All right, and there we have it. So we could earn our 2 marks from that because it explained the different incremental changes or different sections of changes. All right, so we should be okay with that. All right, here now it asks us now to say during which 20-year period did the greatest increase occur. And if you look carefully, you will notice here, let me just go back on the graph and see if we could picture it, which here is the greatest increase. So look at all the graphs here. So this here from 1800 to, from 1880 to 1900, this is like 25. So this is 50, so half of it will be 25. Here is no big change right here. Pretty much all of them will be the same. But if you look at the graph carefully, from 1980 to 2000 is a greater change. And this is a little bit over 50. If you start from here, and it's 25 and it's the next 25 years, so it's a little bit over 50. The rest are less than 50 if you notice them, all right? So you can notice the between 20 years period, the greatest one will be from 1980 to 2000. So this is 1980 to 2000. All right, so there we have it for that part of the question. So and that's a little bit over 50 millimeter in terms of sea level, as I mentioned. All right, it's explain how global warming affects sea level, and this is just a 1 mark question. And so, global warming, if the Earth is becoming warmer, so what is happening there is the heat energy or heat itself will melt ice caps. So you can say that global warming. I think I'm typing the wrong place. Okay, right here. All right, so global warming. So global warming. All right, so global warming caused, all right, let me slow down, cause an increase in sea level by melting ice cap. Okay, by melting ice caps. All right. So here now, it said that for part C, now let's go down to the next part here, that is part C of this question. Now, explain how global warming can affect plant and animal species. So there's a number of ways that this can affect plant and animal species. All right, so one is flooding, and it said explain. So we have flooding. All right, and flooding will lead to the degradation of land. So flooding will cause the degradation of land, leading to the degradation of land, degradation of land. All right, so that's 1 point right there. So let's look at some other point. All right, so let's quickly look at some other points. All right, so the next point we could think about, all right, is here is destruction of habitat. The destruction of habitat. All right. The destruction of habitat. All right. So think about some more. All right. So, how destruction of habitat could cause a problem to animal species? Simple because they destroy their homes. They may not have nests, for example. They flooding could also destroy the habitat as well. All right. All right. So that's very important to make a note. And so we could have also migration of organisms. So we have migration of organisms. So migration could take place. All right. So migration of species. Let's say that species, migration of species. And if you have migration of species, then what this may cause is that you have the reduce in biodiversity. Okay, so you have a decrease in biodiversity, decrease in biodiversity. All right, or you may have lack of food as well in some cases because organism may also migrate because of lack of food. So destruction of habitat, they may destroy, if sea level rise, it could destroy some nesting areas, it may destroy some plant sources, it may destroy animals that live on the trees and logs and so on. All right. So, all right. So let's look at another point here as well. Another point that we could have here, we could have also extreme temperatures. So how extreme temperatures could actually cause, um, could affect plant life or animal species. So let's say in extreme temperatures, but we want to talk about how this could also affect them, right? So if there's a change in temperature, it could affect seasonal crops. So let's talk about seasonal crops. So affecting seasonal crops. And how could this affect seasonal crops? Because remember now, some plant life, they will reproduce or flower based on the season. And certain season will also have certain temperatures as well, right? So seasons are also based on temperatures and different aspect of the environment, right? So a change in the weather or season would affect how plants reproduce. And not only how plants reproduce, some animal species in some countries also move to find different food source based upon the weather condition or the temperatures. They may go in search of water, and so if the temperature change or the weather changes, then a lot of factors in the environment might change, especially those abiotic factors that plant may use to survive. And not even only that, but it may also affect their food sources because if some organism migrate, then other organisms may not be able to find food because the migrating animals, they may be the food source for other animals that are unable to migrate. All right, so we have to think about that as well. We could have another one. We could have drought taking place there, and drought is a lack of water for a long period of time. So we could have drought as well. And so drought is a lack of water over a long period of time in a specific area. If there's a lack of water, then what we might have is that plant life may not be as successful as before, or even some animals now may have problem in finding water for to keep hydrated and also to survive because organisms need water to carry out metabolic processes and other chemical processes as well. All right, so very, very important, and even for enzymes to work. So those are some of the things that you can talk about and explain how they may affect plant or animal species. Okay, so global warming could lead to all of those stuff. There's a 3-mark question, so there are many things you could talk about, much more things. All right, but just have to reason through the questions as best as you possibly can, and make sure you answer the question appropriately and effectively. All right, so it's not about writing a lot of stuff, is really about actually making sure that you understand the content of the topic and also what they're actually asking you to answer. So please be aware of how you're answering a question. All right, so let's go to question number 4 now. And question number 4 said that stem cells are considered to be a potential treatment for many human diseases. Explain the meaning of the term stem cell. Now, a stem cell, there are many ways to define this. I want to tell you that many ways to define it. And so I'm going to say it is a special cell. It is a special cell, all right, that can, special cell that can be divided. It can be divided. All right, that can be divided to produce many different types of cell. Okay, to produce many different types of cell. All right, and so that's very important because a stem cell is those cells that they can make into many other different types of cells. All right, so just to make sure that we have that correct. Yep. All right, so another way to define a stem cell, stem cells are what they call unspecialized cells. Okay, so they are unspecialized cells that formed specialized cells. I'm going to write down a little notation right here. So you can define it like this as well. Unspecialized cells, so they are unspecialized cells. So unspecialized cells, I'm going to put an arrow right there, forming specialized cells. Okay? Forming specialized cells. I'm doing that for short. And what I mean by unspecialized cells is that these cells do not yet have a particular function. For example, if you say nerve cells and so on, no, they're not specialized in actions yet. Okay? They are generalized cells, in other words. Okay, just so they use that term. Another way to define it, you can use the word undifferentiated cell. Okay, so another term you could use right here to define stem cell is that they are undifferentiated cell. Okay, undifferentiated cells. Okay, and undifferentiated cells forming differentiated cells. So it does what that stem cells are. Okay, form differentiated cells. Okay, so stem cells, they simply can make any other type of cells, pretty much. Okay, and they are generally called unspecialized cells or undifferentiated cells. Undifferentiated cells, again, do not have no specific functions as yet, or do not fit any specific functions, but they themselves can be used to become specialized. All right? So in other words, these cells can be used to form a nerve cell or muscle cells or a cell within a certain organ. Yes, so they can be used to form specific cells. All right, so let's go into part B now. It said, name one disease that has the potential to be treated using stem cells. So if you think about it, a disease here, it could be diabetes. Okay, it could be diabetes. Okay, and how stem cell could treat diabetes? Think about it logically. If diabetes is a lack of insulin, right? You can use stem cell to make the cells in the pancreas that produces insulin. All right, so you can make the cells with the islets of Langerhans. You could make them back to produce insulin. Let's think about cancer cell. Yes, so you could use stem cells now to change or replace those cells that are cancerous. Okay, so yes, it may potentially treat cancer. Heart disease. Yep. So we could use the stem cell definitely to treat heart disease, to replace bad cells, definitely. All right, or to make cells that are functional, that can be able to function within the heart. All right. Also, we can even use this stuff to solve or to treat lupus, for example, and there are many other diseases, pretty much. All right, so we can use stem cells to form other cells. So anything that can affect the body, pretty much stem cell may have a potential in treating them. All right, so part B2 is to suggest 2 advantages of treating some diseases with stem cells. So what are some of the advantages? So think about it. You're using stem cells, you're replacing cells with other cells, are using cells now to make cells that you're missing in the body. All right, so if you're missing these cells and use cells to make them, what are some of the advantages? So let's think about it. So one, let's put it right here. One of them, these are 2 marks, so let's just list as much as we possibly can right here. So one, you have less, I'm going to say less or no recovery time needed, right? So less or no recovery time needed. All right. And the possibility here as well is that you have less follow-up treatments. I could just write that here. Less follow-up treatments because the cells are in you, make the new cells. You go home, you live happy. All right. So less follow-up treatments. There's no need to worry about going back to the doctor every time. If you do surgeries, and you have to make sure that the surgery is well, and you have to have time in the hospital to recover and all those type of things. You don't need that. So again, less follow-up treatments or time. So you don't go back and say, okay, you need some medication for this or whatever it is. There's no need. Over time, it may be the most cost-effective thing. It may be expensive at first, but since you don't have to go back to do all type of stuff, it's just a one-time thing. It may be cost-effective. The only thing you may have to go back for is really to make sure for data purpose, they check on you to make sure everything is working right. But generally, it's nothing invasive, really. All right, so no rejection of tissues. Let me just put that. No rejection of tissues. And remember, normally in surgery, why tissues are rejected, like heart transplant or kidney transplant, is simple because the difference in blood group, really, right? But on the cellular level, you don't necessarily will have that type of rejection. All right. Okay. So no rejection, since no blood or blood type is required. You don't need to check blood type and all that. So it's a quick process too. It can be quicker, and it can be readily available to anyone. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait a very long period of time in line to say, okay, you're going to need a heart, and the heart must have this blood type and all that. As a matter of fact, someone have to die first before we get a heart, isn't it? So you don't have to wait for this. So it's quicker, faster, more effective. So there's a number of things you could put here. Again, I'll give you one last one, and before we move on, right? One last one, you don't have to worry about any allergy. So there's no allergic reactions really to this. Again, because there's no blood, there's certain chemicals not involved, there's certain medicine don't need to be involved in this as well, right? All right, so those are just some of the few things that you could list right there. Now for part C, we say the diagram shows one method by which stem cells can be produced. So notice here you have a fertilized egg, 5 days old embryo, you have the inner cell of the embryo is removed, and then you have the stem cells that are formed. All right. So it's a name the method shown in the diagram. So this one is a special type of way to produce a stem cell. And there are more than one ways. I'm going to tell them a matter of fact. So this one is called the ESC production. And what this means is that it means the embryonic. So this will be the embryonic one. Embryonic. Too much wise. Okay. Embryonic. All right, embryonic stem cells, stem cell production. Right. Or simple, if you want to put this in, well, I don't think they will accept the abbreviation. I think you need to write out the things, so at least the people know what you're doing, right? So ESC production, all right, which means embryonic stem cell production, okay? All right, cool. All right, the other methods that you may encounter, just in case, we also have one to call the bone marrow stem cell production. So bone marrow stem cell production. And we also have a next one called the adult stem cell production. Okay. But the adult stem cell production is kind of a different, it's called reprogramming. So I'm going to write that down for you. So this one is called reprogramming. All right. Reprogramming. So what it does is to reprogram the stem cell, really, or reprogram a regular cell, back into a stem cell to produce new cells or the specialized cells, right? So you have bone marrow, stem cell production, you have adult cells, which you take a normal cell and then you reprogram it to become a stem cell. So it's like a reverse process in that sense, right? All right, so that's that for that. Oh, we're still not finished with this question. This question is a long question. All right. So part 2 of this suggests 2 reasons why many people are against this method of stem cell production. And so the biggest one, the biggest one, using embryos. So yes, you're going to raise some ethical issues. So ethical reasons, yes. And let's just talk about why, of course, because some people believe that scientists are messing with the natural process of life, or some scientists may be playing God, or if you use embryo, it is against the possibility of a child being made. And so there are many reasons why this becomes ethical. Is it ethical to use a developing possible human, a potential human, because an embryo is a potential human? Is it an ethical thing to do? So ethical reasons most times is is right on the bat when they talk about using different medical procedures to do different things. All right, another one that they can think about here is the lack of knowledge. Yeah, they do not understand the lack of knowledge. They do not understand the knowledge behind how stem cell work. So of course, lack of knowledge in terms of procedure and all of that. You know, they may say, okay, your embryo is going to self-use as another person's, a young child, and all of that. So lack of knowledge could be a big thing why they actually reject things, because things that persons are ignorant about, they tend to be fearful about it. Let's put also another one. Religion could be a next one. So religion could be a next one, which is a belief or personal beliefs. Those are stuff that you can actually write and talk about. All right. So 2-mark question. And again, is any suitable answers that make sense? Why people will check these things. All right. So, just please just remember to think clearly and just think smartly. Don't overthink. Sometimes we overthink and then we start to write the things that don't make much of a sense. All right. Now, part D is a biotechnology can also be used to produce genetically modified foods, which is GMFs. So if these foods are genetically modified, it's a describe 2 advantage of genetically modified foods. Wow. So let's think about if you modify food. If you're going to modify something, it must become better, as far as I know. So if you're going to modify the food, you can make the food taste better. So better taste. Yep, better taste. Not necessarily mean that's going to be more healthy. I just say better taste, because you can make fruits that normally be sour be sweeter. Yeah, you can make food that normally be small be bigger. Not only that, if you're modifying the food, you can make them become more nutritious, because guess what? You can put a gene inside of the plant or the animal to make it be more nutritious. So if it wasn't producing sodium, for example, you need sodium, it produce more sodium, it produce more protein, whatever, less fat and all those type of stuff. So it does, yeah, so it could be more nutritious as well. Okay, more nutritious. All right. Another one we can say is we can have a faster production of a food as well, right? So instead of a plant growing, taking 2 months, it could grow in 1 month. Instead of a chicken growing in 6 weeks, it could take 2 weeks, and you get chicken that is ready. So faster. I'm not saying healthier, and I'm just saying faster. So faster production. Faster is not always better, but it's an advantage if you want to feed a population that is starving. Faster. Feed everybody. Prevent starvation. That is good thing. That's a good thing. Again, they don't need any pesticides for the most part. So reduction of pesticides. And why don't need pesticides? Because they could modify the plant to be resistant to certain diseases. You should also have a cheaper production. These are so many different things we could write here. All right, so cheaper production of the thing that you're producing over time, because you could produce more in a shorter time as well. So you don't need a lot of labor. So again, you could have longer shelf life is another one too. Yes, longer shelf life. There are so many. Longer shelf life. Okay, longer shelf life. We can also have we can produce under harsh conditions too. So if you're genetically modified, you can produce under harsh conditions. So you can have them become drought resistant. You could have they can able to withstand certain temperatures. So yes, they withstand harsh environments. All right, now we're in section B. We are in section B now. Section B, let me just quickly point this out. Section B has 3 questions for you to answer any 2. All right, we're going to go through all 3. And this part I'm going to go a little bit faster because what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip out all the writing. So you're not going to see me writing anything. I'm just going to go through the answers. And so you're going to observe that, and we're going to discuss them and move on, right? Because for me to write out all of this, it'll be a little bit too much. A matter of fact, I must say this real quick, is that when you're doing section B, please read through all the questions to make sure you can obtain the maximum mark from a particular question. Because sometimes we just start the question and realize that, oh no, the most of the marks we cannot answer it. So read through the entire questions first before you start answering. All right, so let's just jump into the next part. And again, I'm going to skip out all the typing and just go ahead and show the answer. We discuss them because there's a lot. Each question worth 20 marks, all right? So section B here, let me just go to it, is in parts, if you notice it. All right, so I'm going to go to a better typing here. So this is clearer. So question 5, which is the first of the 3 questions, it said environmental groups in the Bahamas are concerned about the impact of various forms of pollution on the local environment. So A is saying distinguish between biodegradable and non-biodegradable pollutants and give one example of each. This is worth 4 marks, folks. So for 4 marks, they need at least 4 points, right? But here they said, no, look at the good thing here now. So they said distinguish between the two and give one example of each. So it's a 4 mark to state the difference and one example of each. That's a 4 marks right there. So the difference is now for 2 marks. It said that biodegradable pollutants are pollutants that can be broken down or decomposed by natural means, especially by bacteria, which we call decomposers. While the non-biodegradable pollutants now are pollutants that break down very slowly or cannot be broken down by natural means or by decomposers. All right? Now, example of biodegradable pollutants, sewage. Trash, and particularly when we say trash, we don't mean cans, we mean plant leaves, board, paper, all right, anything that can be broken down, all right, the leaf of vegetables, things like that, waste vegetables, all right. The non-biodegradable ones now are like cans, plastic, metals, rubber, etc. All right. Now for part B of number 5, now it said describe 2 ways in which plastic is causing harm to the local marine organism. This is 2 marks. Again, you're looking for 2 things. But sometimes what I do is I give a little extra, at least, give it enough. So at least if you see similar questions, you know to deal with it. So one of the answers here is an organism can mistake plastic for food and can cause digestive problems or disorders in the marine organism. Another problem right here again is that organism can get trapped and suffocate in plastic bags or bottles, especially those because fish go into the bottles and cannot come back out. For example, if you have a plastic bag, it may get trapped in the plastic bag, cannot get out, so no food for it for a long period of time. Oxygen content may run out of that plastic bag, and then yes, it may end up in problems. Another possibility here is in the entanglement in plastic, just to make mention of these 2. Damage to habitat or food sources by heavy dumping of plastics. If you dump things that are heavy within the water body, it could press onto things like the coral, cover the coral, and damage the coral and different habitats, of course, right? Another thing here now with this part B2 is a state 2 ways in which Bahamian government is trying to control pollution from plastic. For 2 marks again, I'll give you some extra. One is the banning the use of plastic grocery bags in supermarkets. If you notice, go to the food store, they don't have those original plastic bags you used to have before. Now you have to carry home supermarket bags, right? They may have the small ones, yes. The banning of use of plastic straws and utensils, that's another one that was implemented. Again, what they're trying to do is also to educate the population about the negative impact of plastics. All right. Another possibility here is encouraging recycling projects or initiatives. So, like Can for Kids, for example, is another initiative that came up with collecting cans and so on. And there are many other different initiatives that the government actually involved with. All right. Part C now. I notice again is a 20 mark, right? It's 20 marks for it. So you're going to write a lot. All right. And so here now we say that the devastation caused by hurricanes in the Bahamas often cause wetlands to become polluted with raw sewage and crude oil. Explain how pollution with raw sewage leads to eutrophication and explain the consequences of eutrophication for a wetland ecosystem. So we're going to talk about the effect of eutrophication within the wetland itself. So first to begin, 5 marks. That's a point out, right? I know what eutrophication is. Eutrophication is when the nutrients get into the water bodies and cause the excess growth of algae, right? All right. And of course, because of that, there's a number of negative effects that may take place there. But let's quickly talk about what is it quickly. So eutrophication here is when, again, when nutrients get into the water body and cause excess growth of algae, we call that algal blooming. So you say when raw sewage enters water bodies, large amount of nutrients are released. Algae and bacteria feed on the released nutrients, which result in excess growth and rapid production of algae, or growth of algae, called algal blooming. Now, I want to go back up here to mention something. Okay, that's okay. Something talk about crude oil. Okay, but the question was about crude oil and sewage, but they only talk about the sewage part in part 1. All right, just to mention that. All right, the consequences now. One, you can have more diseases. Why you have more diseases? Because you have excess growth of algae, which also increase the growth of bacteria, because bacteria also use the nutrients and also grow more rapidly, right? More food, the faster they grow. All right. So again, you can have a decrease in oxygen levels in the water. And so the aerobes now, which aerobes mean animals or organisms that use oxygen to respire, right? So aerobes are unable to survive because you have less oxygen. So fish, they use oxygen. So fish, they are aerobes. And also what could happen here again is a blockage of sunlight. And blockage of sunlight could reduce plant growth and zooxanthellae, which is an algae that live in the coral. Okay, and they are very important for to provide color for the coral, and also use the waste within the coral polyps as well. So they're very important within the coral production and development and maintenance of coral. Also, what you could have is coral bleaching. And the reason I put this in red is that coral bleaching is not a direct result, but a secondary, because if you have low oxygen for the coral polyp, then the coral polyp will die because they use the oxygen, and if they die, then the coral will bleach. Another one here is a reduced biodiversity. Reduced biodiversity is simply migration due to poor conditions or lack of food. All right. Again, let's just point out about reduced biodiversity again. Why organism will want to migrate? Again, because if the sewage is causing contamination of a water body, then the organisms that are usually there will not want to be there. Again, if they can't find food, they're going to search somewhere else for food. They're not going to stay there and die. Again, algae covering prop roots and pneumatophores. The prop roots will be for the red mangroves that are closer to the water. So sewage could cover those roots and prevent them from getting oxygen. The pneumatophores, which are breathing roots, if it's covered by sewage, then definitely no oxygen get into the roots of the plant that the plant need to carry out its respiration process. What you can also have is a destruction of breeding spaces for juvenile organisms. And so remember that in the red mangrove, a lot of juvenile fish are found there because they're safer, and juvenile fish will hide into the crevices and spaces of the red mangrove roots and for protection. So definitely, the destruction of these breeding grounds, these juvenile organisms are less protected and more vulnerable to their predators. All right, so let's go to this part now. It's a eutrophication is one way in which raw sewage can cause problems. State 3 ways in which raw sewage can cause problems to tourists and local inhabitants living on the islands. So now, beside the area, the environment, how can it affect us, really? So one, the sewage that is there, the raw sewage could be unsightly, of course. And so that will definitely pose a risk of you wanting to use that area. And so what will happen, it affect recreational activities and also sporting activities. You may end up getting unpleasant odors from the area as well, really smelling bad. So of course, affecting your respiratory problem, your breathing and all of that. Lack of fishery resources. And if you have a lack of fishery resources because of sewage, because of destruction of habitat, killing of juvenile organisms, no way to spawn and all those type of things, then what you may have eventually is a reduce in income or food. Because if these marine organisms are not able to reproduce or grow to maturity effectively, then we're going to have lack of food. And then for some persons who depend on the ocean for the income, they will suffer as well. All right. Also, we could have diseases. And diseases such as skin rash, we may have those, and other ailments coming from the area, if you should use that area. But who would want to go into a sewage infested water? No way. But just in case you may get into it, you may never know, because the water could look clean and the sewage settle. But then again, you may end up with rashes because of bacteria and other pathogens that may inside of the water body itself. Food poisoning. Somebody catch a nice fish for you, looking good. You don't know where it come from. Yeah, you clean it and all that, but you have pathogens or microorganisms inside of that fish. You eat that fish, you become sick as well. All right, and also not only that, because the poisonous substances, again, that can be found in sewage, especially if untreated. Then, if one organism eats it, it may be passed on through the ecosystem and bioaccumulate, and then now when you eat it, now you become poison. All right, so that's some of the things that you may want to look at. The question is not finished yet. We stand question number 5. All right, so part 3 of this part, it said that describe 4 effects that pollution with crude oil could have on nesting coastal birds and their habitats. So when we say nesting coastal birds, we're talking about these birds that they have their nest on the coast and they lay their eggs on the coast, and also the habitat may be on the rocks or in the sand, whatever it is, because some birds, you may see them burrow in the sand and all that to lay eggs and all those type of stuff. So one thing here for crude oil, if crude oil catch onto the feathers of these animals, right, they may end up with a state of hypothermia. And hypothermia is because what happened here is that the feathers now will lose the property of providing insulation for the birds. All right, and so if the feathers now cannot warm the birds anymore, they're going to be exposed to this extreme temperature, coldness particularly, and could be leading to hypothermia, and of course, death after that. But you should not use death as your first answer or an answer. You can explain how these things could cause death. Okay? All right, so number 2 here now say destroy eggs, reducing population. So if you destroy the eggs are covered with oil. And so the eggs now, they cannot hatch properly. So it reduces the hatching conditions or the hatching properties and probability of the eggs. And so because of that, you have a reduction in population of that bird. Again, what could happen here? It could destroy nest. All right. So you could cover the nest, unable to find, and so the adult bird, if they're not affected, they may have difficulty in finding the nest. And so if they're not there to warm the eggs by laying on the eggs, then the eggs may not hatch. All right. Again, it may also destroy habitats, which unable to roost. When I say roosting of birds is where they will stay to rest. They hang out to rest. So some birds will rest on the rocks or just chill out on the rocks. So if it's damaged those places, the birds can't use anymore, and so therefore they may have problems finding habitats or even their resting place. Right. So you have to change where they actually rest, which may expose them to more predators and so on. All right, so lack of food, unable to feed self and chick. So if they cannot find food, if they get food from the water body and you have crude oil there, they can't get any food, then they will suffer. Their chick will also suffer. Particularly if a bird only eat fish, they know what will happen. There's no other food. They can't venture out to land if it's not eating land food, right? So those are some of the things. Another thing could happen here is drowning. I'm just giving you a lot of possibilities, so you just choose which is best for you if you should see this type of question. So drowning may take place. How drowning may take place is simple, because guess what? The oil will cover their feathers again and they will be unable to fly. And so if they're in the water, the feathers get trapped in the oil, the feathers get heavy, they will sink, they will drown. It's a pity, but yes. All right, number 7, 7th option here is that poisoning also could take place. And so the birds may consume the toxin from the oil while they're cleaning their feathers as well. Not only that, they may eat poisonous fish or poisonous organism that absorb the poison or toxin from the oil. All right, so there we are finished with that question. Now we're going on to another question here. All right, so the question is blurry for now because I've magnified, but I have a cleaner version for it. So I'm going to show you the cleaner version here, which is this. All right, again, this is in parts, right? All right, so it said the dentition of many animals are directly linked to their type of nutrition. So based on how the teeth formation, in other words, it may determine the type of nutrition. In other words, it determine the things that you eat. And so the diagram now shows the dentition of two animals, animal A and animal B. So we have the diagrams there clearly, and you will notice animal A, they have incisor canines, premolars, and we have the carnassial teeth. Okay, which again, carnassial teeth, those are the teeth that pretty much are very sharp, but they're not really canines, but they're similar to canines. All right, so they have canines property. All right, and so here we have animal B, we have our molar, we have premolar, and we have a diastema right here, which is absent of teeth, and is a region that separate teeth with different functions. So it just separate them like that. We also have our horny pad, and horny pad is what some organism will use to pick leaves from trees. You know, so it's like a little scissors type of thing that use to clip leaves and scrape leaves of trees, and even to pluck some grass as well. All right, so let's get into it a little bit and see what they're asking us for this. Is a state type of nutrition for animal A and explain 2 reasons for your choice. Again, big thing, you know, once a canine, you see they're so large, particularly large, they know for sure that, hey, this is a meat eater. Not only that, look at the other teeth, they are very pointy, right? And notice the word there coming from canine, carnassial teeth. Carnassial, again, look at the shape of the teeth. Even if you didn't know what the word carnassial is, but the fact that the teeth are very sharp, they are pointed just like canines, man, this must be a meat ripper, right? So the nutrition is meat, or otherwise they are carnivores. So the nutrition is going to be meat. They're going to rely on meat a lot. And so they are called carnivores. I must put in carnivores there to help us guide us through what we're doing. So the nutrition is meat, and they are carnivores. Now, a reason for your answer, because it's large canines, and canines are used for ripping and tearing meat. So explain your answers, you know. Explain them, please. Yeah. All right. So another reason right here is that you have large carnassial, and that large carnassial teeth, they are used, they're used for cutting meat. Okay. All right. All right. And next thing here is that the teeth are very pointy to cut into meat. So you have 3 possible reasons there to give them to explain why you choose animal A to be a meat eater. Now it's a state the type of nutrition for animal B and explain 2 reasons for your choice. So 3 marks again. 1 mark to name the nutrition, and this is a plant or herbs. All right, so it's called herbivore. Again, the reason, if you look at the diagram B, if you should go back to it, you notice that there is no canines, not one. They don't live. There's no canine in this animal, and simply because they're not able to rip meat, they're not eating meat, so there's no need for canine in this animal at all. Let's quickly go back to remind you how it looks. See it? No canine. You have molar, premolar, incisor. No canine at all. So definitely, if there's no canine, don't eat any meat. Now, an animal that have canine, incisor, and all those teeth, like us, we eat everything. So we are omnivores, right? So those are some good things we'll look out for. Again, the presence of ornipod. The ornipod, you have to remove leaves from trees, right? And another reason here that you have more premolars and molars, and the purpose of molars and premolars is to really grind meat for a long period of time. Animal eaters, they just rip, tear, chew, and swallow for the most part. Do you ever see a cow eating it? They chew the cud, they sit and they chew that cud, they grind that food down. And the reason too why they grind that food down, because guess what? Most plant materials contain cellulose. Well, I'm going to say most, all plant materials contain cellulose. And cellulose is a rigid substance that need to be broken down properly. So the more the animals chew their rough edge, right, is the more they get out of the cellulose. All right? And we can't digest cellulose because we don't have the proper enzymes and bacteria to do that. All right, part 3 says give 2 differences between the dentition of animal A and that of a human. Again, I love to draw charts, just kind of separate my points when I'm doing differences. I just like it. And so animal A, we say they have large canines, and humans, they have smaller canines. Animal A, they have pointier canines, and humans have less pointy canines. Animal A, which is a carnivore, they have molar and premolars, and the molars and premolars, they are normally carnassial. All right, but for human beings now, the molar and premolar tend to be flatter. They have a flatter surface, and to break up food into large surface area. And so the teeth themselves will have large surface area as well, right? All right. Part B now is that for many years, biotechnology has harnessed the use of helpful microbes in the food and drug industry. A student found the following information on the internet on how to make homemade yogurt. Listed below are the steps to make homemade yogurt. 1. Heat milk in a saucepan to 80 degrees Celsius. 2. Allow warmed milk to cool to about 46 degrees Celsius. Add lactobacillus culture to the milk and leave in warm place for at least 8 hours. Now, the lactobacillus is a bacteria, okay? I notice the word lacto coming from lactose, which means this bacteria will react or break down lactose, which is milk sugar, okay? All right, so they are very important for that. All right, so you're gonna pour the yogurt now in a sterile container, and sterile mean free from microbes, okay? Sterile container or free from. To be sterile from something means that you're free from it. Okay, so a sterile container, and place it in the refrigerator. Now, for part 1 of this question is to state the reason for carrying out step 1, 2, and 4. So not 3, but step 1, 2, and 4. So what 3 was is that add the bacteria. So 1 is to heat, 2 is to allow it to cool, and 4 is to pour it in a sterile container. So we have them here. Step 1 now. Why warm it is to kill the unwanted or potential harmful microbes or bacteria. In other words, what you're doing is a sterilization process, or what they call pasteurization of the milk. Okay? So the high heat now will denature's whey proteins and make the milk more gel-like. Because milk is separated in the two parts, whey and curds. Okay? The curd is the harder part of the milk, and whey is the liquid part of the milk. So if you denature the proteins now that makes the whey, right? And whey is WHEY. So if you denature the enzyme that make the whey, which is the liquid part, then all you're gonna get is more solid to jelly-like. So that's the purpose for doing the heat process, right? You can try this at home if you want to see whey and curd in milk. If you have a milk, squeeze some lime into it, and you will see it start to curdle. We say curdling up or coagulate. And you're going to see the hard stuff on top of the milk and the liquid part at the bottom. It's a cool experiment to do. Do it in a clear glass, but please do not drink it after. So squeeze some lime into milk. You see it curdle that milk. All right, because again, the lime is acidic and it will react with the milk protein and also with the milk sugar as well. So try it, but do not drink it. It could cause serious belly problems. Right? You don't want to be in the bathroom for hours. Please do not do that. All right, please don't do it. But for observation purpose, do it and see. You see the whey from the curd. All right, so for step 2 now, is to ensure that the lactobacillus bacteria, so the reason we're cooling it down after warming up is to ensure you get a temperature now that the lactobacillus bacteria can grow and reproduce, because they need suitable temperature. And for that purpose, we call that process the incubation period. You're going to incubate it for after you put the bacteria in, you're going to incubate it so the bacteria could grow under suitable temperatures, right? All right, and this last step, which is step 4. Now, why would you want to put it into a sterile container and also to put it in the refrigerator? Is one is to end the fermentation process. Cooling will end the fermentation process, because remember, fermentation is caused by microorganism, which is the lactobacillus bacteria. So cooling it, these bacteria will not be able to really at a low temperature, they will not be able to respire, and so they become inactive, and so the fermentation process will stop. Why do you put in a sterile container? Is simply to prevent contamination and spoilage of the yogurt. Because if a container is not sterile and other bacteria are present, then the bacteria that are present could cause the yogurt to become spoiled and form vinegar with that sour taste, acidic taste. All right, and also to increase the shelf life, or the longer you keep your yogurt a longer period of time. Now, part 2 of this question is outline the role of lactobacillus in step 3 of the process. And it's a 4-mark thing. So I have a number of marks right here. So one is to the ferment lactose sugar. So you're going to ferment the lactose sugar. Remember, lactobacillus again is lactose. So you ferment the lactose sugar, you break it down, and produce lactic acid. Lactic acid is what will give you the taste and flavor of the milk or the yogurt. So lactic acids now will lower the pH level of the milk, make the milk acidic. Now, once the milk is acidic, it will coagulate the milk, making the curds thicker. Remember, I talked about the lime and milk experiment, because the acid again will coagulate the milk. So if you squeeze lime, which is acidic, in milk, you're going to see the separation of the hard part and the liquid part. The hard part is called curd, the liquid part is called whey. All right, and so you want the milk to become as thick as possible, because you want that creamy richness, that creamy goodness of the yogurt, right? And so the lactic acid provides the characteristic flavor of the yogurt as well. All right, so let's now jump into part C. It said describe 3 different ways in which microbes provide benefit to humans and 2 different ways in which they cause harm to humans. All right, so remember now, microbes could be beneficial to us. Bacteria, good stuff. As a matter of fact, most bacteria don't even harm us, just to make a mention of that. Only a few of them really cause diseases. They are called pathogens. So disease-causing organisms, they are called pathogens. So a benefit to us now, microbes. Microbes improves our digestive system, because microbes will help to break down certain things inside of our guts. All right? And even some microbes help us to produce vitamins. I think I've listed, I'm not sure, but it should be there. But let's go through. Microbes can help us to a process of detoxification, because microbes could help us to break down harmful chemicals as well. Microbes are beneficial to us because they help us to produce food, as we mentioned one up top, yogurt, bread, wine. Another benefit is that help us to build immunity, because once we're exposed to them, our bodies will produce antibodies against them, and so we build up immunity over a period of time. We become stronger and better against microbes. Production of medicines such as insulin and antibiotics. We use microbes to do these things. All right. We use bacteria, the plasmid of bacteria, to make insulin by putting the insulin producing genes into them, and they will produce insulin for us, for the persons who are diabetic. Also, again, they help to produce vitamins in our gut. The negative impact of microbes onto us, yes, generally they cause diseases. Some do. And the ones that cause diseases, we call those pathogens. Okay? And then also they could cause our food to spoil. You leave your food for a while, you can't eat that, because you're going to get sick. You would have some diarrhea, which is a bad thing. You want to be in a bathroom uncomfortable and want to come out. That not a good feeling at all. Damage of crops. And if your crops are damaged by microbes, because like fungi could damage your crops, some bacteria damage your crops as well, damage your fruits, fruit spoilage, no production of fruits, or in some cases, the plant may even die. And because of that, you lose food, or you may lose income. So loss in income and loss in food. Disease in livestock. And disease in livestock, again, could cause us now to become sick as well, because we eat the livestock. Or we may lose some income, or we may lose food. Again, if you look at the number of marks, you just decide how you want to distribute. It's only 5 marks. So 2 of each, 2 of one, 3 of the other. Or you can just distribute according to how you feel. All right, just to gain the 5 marks. All right, number 7, which is a final question. All right, so number 6 was kind of short, but notice it's long, for each part is longer. So last question now, said this question refers to the temperature regulation in organism. So that means that we control temperature, right? Now, so the graph show the body temperatures recorded when a mouse in graph 1 and a snake in graph 2 were subject to changes in outside temperatures. So look at the graph now carefully. Let me just kind of highlight something real quick to make sure that, let me just quickly point this out, just 1 second. I need to mark on this as quickly as possible. Okay, great. So I want to point out this line right here, right? No, I'm not there. Right. Okay. Unfortunately. Yeah, I have it now. Right. So this line here, if you notice this line, is the temperature of the mouse, right? The body temperature, 40 degrees Celsius, regardless of the environmental temperature, right? So as an increase in temperature, this one stay like that. But for the snake, now the temperature, the body temperature increases like that, and it increases while we have here an increase in temperature as well. All right, so let's get down into this now. So for part A, it said, state the term used to describe the method of temperature regulation in each of these organisms. Explain a choice using the evidence shown on the graph. And so the evidence shown on the graph, I just highlight them. So we don't need to go back. The mouse is one flat line. The snake is increasing line upwards, increasing line towards the right. So here now, it said the mouse is warm-blooded. How we know is the blood is warm-blooded? Simply because the temperature remains the same. The answer is not warm-blooded. I'm just describing the mouse. It said that the method of temperature control here is going to be endothermic. The organism is endothermic. All right? And so since it's endothermic, what this means that the body temperature remains the same regardless of a change in the temperature of the environment. So warm-blooded organism, they maintain their temperature regardless of the changes in the environment. A matter of fact, warm-blooded organisms are endotherms. We call them endotherm. So endotherms are only mammals and birds, just to make a mention of that, right? Now, snake, they are cold-blooded, all right? But the answer now is they are ectothermic. Ectothermic. And the reason why they're ectothermic is simply because the body temperature changes according to the change in the temperature of the environment. They adjust their temperature to suit the environmental temperature, right? So the body their bodies match to that of the environment. Now, other terms to consider or to note that in red, I'm putting that in red right there just for information purposes now. The cold-blooded organisms are also called poikilothermic, okay? So poikilothermic is the name for them as well. And now homeothermic now is for warm-blooded. So these two words, poikilothermic is for cold-blooded and homeothermic is for warm-blooded. All right. So endotherms, they are homeothermic. And ectothermic organism or ectotherm, they are poikilothermic as well. All right. So part 2 of this question is to describe 3 adaptations of mice that enable them to survive when the environment temperature is high. So if the temperature is high, think about it yourself. Well, you're not a mouse, but you may do similar things, but not the exact thing, because they're a little bit different from us, even though they are mammals. But there are certain things that will be similar to us with them. If it's hot, you're gonna go somewhere that is cooler naturally, right? But the mice now, they have less fur on their tails and feet compared to other areas of their bodies. So in their tails now, where it's less covered by fur, those areas will lose heat rapidly through their skins, of course, right? So the skin will lose heat very rapidly because there's no fur covering it. Fur will insulate the skin, make it warmer. So the tails and feet, yeah, they lose heat from those areas really, really rapidly. Another adaptation right here is that the blood vessels in the tail and feet and also the ears dilate, which is vasodilation that occurs in us as well. And while that is happening, they lose a lot of heat energy through vasodilation. Again, it ties into number 1, just to make a mention of that, because they no fur and their skin exposed, vasodilation take place in those areas more. Again, small body mass. The small body mass also cause them to lose a lot of heat as well, because the ratio between the weight and body mass and all of that will affect the amount of heat that they can lose in a given time compared to other organisms. All right, so you have a reduced fat as well. So in their bodies, they don't have much fat in their bodies to keep them warm. All right, so they tend to lose heat during warmer temperatures because you have less fat content during those times. Also, what is important here again is another point is that they eat less and reduce metabolic processes. Eating less, you produce less fat because there's less food to be stored as fat. All right, and also they reduce the metabolic processes as well, because metabolic processes, some of them will produce a lot of heat energy as well. Okay, so they do this to reduce heat as well. And next thing that they do is ability to find and hide in cooler areas. We'll do that, isn't it? So if you're hot, you're gonna find somebody shady. So they will move and hide under objects like dump sites and dump areas, or even your homes, unfortunately. But they're gonna find places that are cooler for them to hide out. They may chill out in debris, all right, like in the dump and all those things. They may dig holes. Some of you may see this. They dig holes in a yard, and they may hide out in a yard underneath the ground, because on the ground is cooler than on the surface, right? All right. Part 3 is to suggest 2 ways in which snakes survive when the temperature is low. So we just talk about when the temperature is high for for mice. Then we talk about when the temperature is low for snake. Now, for snake, if the temperature is low, which means it's cooler, what they will do sometimes, they will burrow into holes under the rocks. For example, they live on the rocks or other warmer places. So they go where it is warmer. All right, they will go for warmth. So if the surface of the earth is cool, they go to places which is much warmer. And next thing that they do is they partially hibernate. Okay? And this partial hibernation is called brumation. And brumation is really a long sleep. So snakes do not truly hibernate, they only partially hibernate, with just like a deep sleep for a long period of time. And they do this to conserve their energy, because keeping the energy in the metabolic processes going on in the body, the heat will retain instead of you using energy to walk up and down and they don't walk, they crawl. All right. So instead of using energy to do all of these processes, they conserve that energy to keep their body temperature itself warm. Another thing is that they move into the sun sometimes, so they may bathe in the sun. They call sunbathing or sun basking. All right. So yes, so they do that. Another thing that another adaptation for them in terms of adaptation is that they have scales, all right, and scales will help to kind of form an insulation on them as well, so they won't feel that extreme cold. All right, so that's another good thing that they have is scales to really prevent them from getting cold. But this is not saying adaptation. If I'm just going back to the question, not saying adaptation, it just say ways in which snakes survive. But I'm just giving an adaptation that they may have is scales all over their bodies. All right. All right. So part B said in humans, the response to change in the environment is an involuntary action using negative feedback in order to maintain homeostatic balance. And so a negative feedback simple means is that two systems working opposing to each other or opposingly to each other to maintain a balance. So if something is causing an increase in a particular thing, another thing is causing a decrease in it. A prime example of this is how insulin and glucagon work. Insulin decreases sugar level in the blood, while glucagon increases sugar level in the blood. All right, and that's a negative feedback system in maintaining the amount of sugar in the blood. All right, just to point that out. Now, this saying explain the meaning of the term involuntary action and homeostatic balance. And so involuntary action, these are actions that are automatically, listen now, the word automatically controlled by the brain, particularly the medulla oblongata, in response to changes within the environment. And these changes in the environment is they are called stimuli. Now the reason I'm pointing out the word automatic is because we have another quick response is called reflex action, and reflex is not automatic. Please, it is not automatic. It's an immediate response. Immediate is different from automatic. Automatic means it's controlled by a system that is always doing the same thing for a particular thing. Reflex is a different thing. It's immediate, no brain involvement. So it's not a fixed system that does this every time. Automatic means it's a control design system. Okay, just to mention that. All right. Now, homeostatic balance simply means that the state of maintaining the conditions of the body, keeping the body conditions stable. That's what it means. To keep the body conditions stable. All right. And that comes from the word homeostasis. All right, just point it out. Part C, it said name 3 structures found in the skin involved in temperature regulation. For each structure named, describe how it responds to a drop in the environmental temperature. So for each of these structures that we named, we're going to describe how it responds to a drop in the environmental temperature. So we're looking at when the temperature gets cold, right? So here, for example, here they raise up and trap air, which is AIR, that insulate the skin. So listen to my pronunciation. It's different from what you may pronounce it because based on my accent, I drop off the H most times if you notice that. So hair versus air, okay? So the hair on their skin will raise up, trap the air from the atmosphere to insulate their skin, and they become a little bit warmer. Now, blood capillaries, they constrict and move away from the surface of the skin, and the purpose for doing that is really to retain heat. So blood capillaries constrict, coming down into the body, away from the skin, and the heat is reserved or conserved within the body. They have adipose tissues as well. Adipose tissues, which is also called the subcutaneous layer. All right, this layer of fat insulate the skin and reduce heat loss. So it's an insulator. Fat is an insulator within the body. All right, it's also a shock absorber, but it's not for this question. All right, this question is only talk about heat or and temperatures. Now, sweat glands are also there, and sweat gland produce, when it's colder, you produce less sweat, and you produce less sweat because once you're sweating, you're going to cool the skin, which you don't want, so you produce less sweat as well. So you regulate by producing less sweat, and so more water is conserved in the body, and in that case, you really start to urinate more. That's why on a colder day, you urinate more than now you sweat. Now, for part 2, it said explain why these changes described in 1C and 2, described in C2 are examples of negative feedback. When we talk about negative feedback, is 2 different systems working opposingly to each other to maintain a particular condition. Now, because the reverse of each process occurs, this is the answer. Because the reverse of each process occurs in the if the environmental temperature should increase, and you will explain all of this information. So because the reverse of each process occurs in the environmental temperature should increase, and you're going to explain exactly the changes. Okay. All right. So if you go back to part C2, all right, part C2, which is this. Part C should be part C2 or part C1. Okay, so part C2 here, should be part C1. That's a typo right there. So it should be part C1. And so we're going to explain the name things that you have up here in this section. Let's say, why is a negative feedback? If we're going to talk about here, for example, then what you're going to mention, that's important. You're going to talk about if its temperature is higher, the hair will lay down, and that will release here and release air, which is AIR, and so the body will become a little bit cooler. The blood capillaries instead they will dilate when the temperature is higher, and dilation of the capillaries will cause heat to be lost from the skin. The adipose tissue will not necessarily change, unfortunately. That can't really change, but definitely air and blood capillaries will change. Sweat gland, the sweat glands, they will start producing sweat to cool the body. Okay, so this is actually should be part C1. I just realized that. All right, and so this is where we end this paper review. So thank you for being here. Please read, practice, study hard, and I will see you soon. Take care.